Hi, guys, it's Carlo here. Thank you for listening to our latest episode. It's the support of our community like you that allows us to continue to grow and make this into something truly extraordinary. If you enjoyed today's episode and you would like to listen to it without the interruption of ads and maybe even experience some bonus content, I'd invite you to join us on our newly launched Patreon. And if maybe that's not something you can do right now, please consider liking, subscribing, sharing, and commenting on places like YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, all that good stuff. You'll find us under @Millennials and Community for pretty much all of those. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you again soon.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to today's InfoM.A.C. On today's episode, we're talking all about the ArriveCan app. What was once just a simple phone app has ballooned to a multi-million-dollar scandal. Join Matt and Carlo as they share the most important information you need to know, whether you should be concerned about it, and what you can do to ensure it doesn't happen again. Thank you for being part of our community.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another InfoM.A.C. episode. For those of you that aren't familiar, InfoM.A.C. is a series brought to you by the Millennials and Community podcast, where we attempt to discuss topics that are relevant and current and top of mind for a lot of people. So today in our episode, we are going to discuss the current scandal going on with the Canadian federal government over the overinflated spending that has resulted from the ArriveCan app. So we're going to talk about what we know, what you should be paying attention to, and then start to have a conversation about what this means and how to interpret the extent to which governments are able to make decisions on our behalf as citizens. So for reference point, for those of you listening to this, today is Monday, February 26th. And certainly this is something that is very, very front and center in at least Canadian media right now. And that is the scandal related to the creation of the ArriveCan app. For those of you who are not Canadian, or potentially you didn't have the opportunity to travel as extensively, so you're not familiar, ArriveCan was an app that was commissioned by the federal government of Canada. It was designed to track all of the health information, particularly as it pertains to the COVID-19 pandemic. So for those people that were traveling abroad, Canadian citizens traveling abroad, or international folks coming in and traveling and entering the country of Canada, ArriveCan was the app that was used to create all of the data or house all of the data related to vaccination status, symptom tracking, things like that, all related to travel eligibility with COVID. Now, what is this scandal that we're talking about? Well, it's recently come to light that the contract for the creation of the ArriveCan app just became explosively larger than it was originally agreed upon, to the extent that the original budget, the original contract for the creation of the ArriveCan app was budgeted for $80,000, and the price tag, as far as we know right now, is actually, in fact, a whopping $59.5 million. Like, we're adding zeros and just astronomical amounts of money. But I don't think government's overspending is anything particularly new, but this isn't where the scandal ends. We've got this inflation from $80,000 to $59.5 million. But not only that, the company that was contracted to do this work, they're not actually an IT company. This is what the mind-blowing thing is. They are, in fact, a staffing company. They're a glorified recruitment agency that was contracted, somehow awarded the bid on this massive government contract to apparently hire the IT people that created this app. So there's just a significant miss here in terms of why a staffing company was the one awarded the contract to create this app on behalf of the federal government. Now, there's some other things that we can get into, but there's some pretty significant accountability issues here, and I think Carlo wants to share some, so I'll let you jump in.
Yeah, and this is kind of interesting because the concept of a company being hired to hire programmers in the IT world is actually not that uncommon. So, to somebody that isn't aware of that, they might look at it and go, no, this feels really, really off. But it's not uncommon for a staffing agency to have a book of programmers that specialize in various programming languages and skill sets that they can reach out to and find a project for. So that's not quite uncommon. The part that really throws a lot of people off and makes them upset is this idea that this company, GC Strategies was the big one. They're the ones that seem to have profited the most off of this. It's one thing if the people that made the app made the money, but they're the ones that seem to have profited the most off of it. And we're starting to also hear a lot of examples of where they used that money to either influence further decisions being made on the project, or they were effectively wining and dining the people that were responsible for these contracts. And that is, to me, the most alarming thing. In the business world, if you're hired to do a job, you're hired based off of your merit, your ability to do the work, not whether you're friends with or you spent the most money on that friend's birthday gift, right? Like it's a really difficult situation. I fully believe that friends will help friends in business, but when we're talking about that much money of taxpayers' money, it becomes a very alarming thing.
Well, and I think too, certainly you speak to the purchasing of dinners and meals and gifts. So obviously you see that public money being kicked back in the form of these handouts, essentially. But the reporting now, the Auditor General is even reporting at this point that GC Strategies was actually involved in the creation of the criteria on the bid. Can you imagine that a consulting firm was actually involved in determining which criteria a successful bid would have to achieve in order to get the work, right? Like it's like you're hiring a plumber, and your plumber comes to the door and says, here's the list of things that make a great plumber. Oh, well, it just so happens I'm 12 out of 10 of these great plumber traits. You should hire me to be your plumber, right? Like that's a significant conflict of interest. And something else that's noteworthy too is over the last 10 years, and 10 years is significant, again, for those of you that don't know Canadian politics, 2015 is when this current government and current prime minister has been in power. Over the last 10 years, this company has been awarded more than $239 million worth of contracts. So it really begs the question of like, how are decisions getting made? How are contractors getting chosen? Now, really getting more into what we wanted to talk about on this issue, I don't think it's reasonable that the government is going to vet the decision on every single staff, every single contractor, every single provider of services by the citizens writ large, right? Like that's just not feasible at all. But what is a reasonable expectation of our right as citizens to know or be privy to decisions getting made? And at what level is the government allowed to say, well, you voted us in, you've elected us, this is the mandate that you've given us to go and do what we need to do on your behalf?
And further to that, I think it's worthwhile to think about the fact that one of the reasons this is coming to light and becoming such a big topic for a lot of people is due to the cost of living crisis we're currently going through. If the entire country is in a level of prosperity, we don't tend to care as much where the government spends our money. But the fact that people are struggling to put food on their tables and we're watching, you know, the government in power currently spending money the way that they are, it raises a lot of alarm bells, because at the end of the day, the Canadian populace are the ones that have to pay for all of it. You know, it doesn't come out of any higher level governmental's positions compensation. It comes out of your taxes. It comes out of your income taxes. So that's a really alarming thing. And to Matt's point is like, where is that line of like, this is no longer good with us. You need to run these decisions past us. And where do we let the governments that we've effectively hired handle that decision? And it can be a really tough line to draw. We don't want to be brought in at the end of it like we are now, where we're demanding retribution almost. But we also have too much going on in our lives to sit around and help the government make these decisions.
Especially when I think each of us in our own way has certain areas of expertise, and certainly you and I have strengths and expertise that differ from each other, let alone everyone else. But when you look at it at a government level, a lot of politicians that are influential in making these decisions don't necessarily have the experience or the technical experience in, obviously in this case, it's IT development, but certainly this isn't exclusive to this case. And so how do we, on one hand, trust that these politicians, especially if they're career politicians and they don't have technical experience in name your industry, how do we trust that they're making the best decision when some of us who have those technical decisions, obviously, again, I get that it's not feasible to loop in what's Canada now, 34, 35 million people, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. But you know, where do we draw the line? But then, of course, also there's the really important converse argument, and that is, well, look, there are certain things that a federal government has to do in the interest of national security, for one, but certainly others, that it just is not safe for every individual citizen to know and be intimately familiar with the ins and outs of some of the things going on. So where do we draw that line? Where is the citizen's right to know? And what is it that we need to know to exist as a functional citizen?
Well, and I'm gonna draw a kind of a dangerous stance on this here, but this is something I've been giving a lot of thought on and something I feel fairly passionate about. I think I think there's two major things that we need to be sure of as citizens of Canada, as citizens of any government really, is that the people that we are hiring to do the jobs are qualified to do the job, right? Like if we're going to appoint a minister of transportation, I would very much prefer that minister has experience in transportation and civil management and all things related to it. And I'm not saying that they have to be an expert in every nuance, but they have to have an understanding of the working. We can't appoint someone to that position that has no experience in it, because they're not going to be able to make the decisions that are necessary. And that is something that we're seeing here, is that one of the answers that I saw to a question was, well, why were these people awarded the contracts if we weren't confident they could do the work? And the answer was because the people awarding the contracts don't know how to evaluate whether they could do the work or not.
Okay, so that's an interesting take. I'm going to push back there. I'm going to say that I actually don't need my cabinet ministers to have any sort of experience that's relevant to the portfolio that they're in. You know, these decisions are not made in isolation, and these ministries, provincially, forget federally, are made of hundreds and hundreds of employees who have the technical expertise. And so the minister isn't actually, the function of the minister is not actually to actually know the technical skills. They're the ones that are responsible for bringing government policy and applying it to their certain skill set. So while I hear you, that's maybe true if your minister is making decisions in a vacuum, but that's just simply not the way the governments work.
And I'm willing to concede to that. If the role of the minister is to be the liaison between the government and the people that are making those kind of decisions, then that's fine. But the people making the decision, awarding the contract, having the meetings with these people, need to be able to accurately gauge whether that person can complete the work, right?
Yeah, I agree. And that's definitely where the disconnect is here.
The other side of it, and this is a big one for me with my financial background, the people making the decisions, and I think this should span to all aspects of government, you should not be allowed to receive compensation in any way, shape, or form, gift or otherwise, from anybody that you are awarding or looking to award business to. Right? And I say in my financial background because that is considered insider trading. Okay, you go and you buy $100,000 worth of stock for ABC Company, and then you award ABC Company a $300 million contract. That is insider trading. It is illegal, apparently, for anybody else other than our governmental officials. And I have a huge problem with that, evidently.
So what do we do about it? Obviously, we are now caught in this place where, as you say, we're hearing about this retroactively. Like, what can we do to take action and to make our actions count on this?
Well, and I think that this is actually a question that you're a lot more suited to answer than I am. I tend to be an armchair complainer sometimes. As per one of our last episodes or future episodes, depending on when this comes out, I go to my online communities and I be very vocal about them. But at the end of the day, it's this age-old thing that I think we've been struggling with as a country for a while, involving electoral reform, right? One of the big reasons that was a big hot button in the last several elections was because we don't feel confident that we have the appropriate people to choose from making our elections or electing. And we don't feel the accurate level of representation in our governments, especially out in Western Canada, is a big touch point for a lot of us out here. And I don't have an answer for that. So Matt, as somebody with a little bit more experience in the political process, what would you say is something we can do today as regular people, as regular millennials, to try and make our voices heard a little more?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm going to be a broken record on this because I've said this time and time again, but the first thing that you need to do is make sure that you are as educated on a given topic as you can. And by the way, being educated on topic does not mean that you sit on social media for 10 minutes and read a post from a person who's particularly loud and outspoken because you don't know that they know what they're talking about. Being educated does not mean that you read one article from one news outlet and you take everything in that article at face value. Being educated means that we look for multiple sources, and in anything that involves politics, multiple sources from multiple different political parties, and using the information to really triangulate our understanding of what the situation is and what the situation looks like. Once you feel like you have enough information that you can speak to things, or at least understand enough to know what questions haven't been answered, that's when you fully are within your rights as a citizen to reach out to your elected officials. Of course, in this case, it would be your member of parliament or your MP. If it's a provincial issue, your MLAs or your provincial ministers, and then, of course, your city councilors at a municipal level. But too many people go onto places like X, Instagram, Facebook to complain about things that they actually aren't, in fact, educated in, as opposed to doing it the other way around. Like, let's find out what we can, and then let's go to the people who are involved in that decision-making process and make sure that they know how we as constituents feel. Because believe it or not, our members of parliament, our MLAs really don't care about what you're complaining about on your social media. They need to be able to hear it from you first if it's going to hold any weight.
Yeah. And I think something that's really worthwhile pointing out, and you alluded to it a little bit, is hearing from both sides of our government, right? For the most part, like, it has been a race between the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party on a federal level for forever here in Canada. And we are very close to election time. So what you're seeing a lot of is, especially if you're following the direct social media channels of the Conservative or Liberal Party, you're going to be seeing a lot of pointing out the mistakes and shortcomings of the other side. Because unfortunately, that's the world of politics. Is it's not, hey, look what great thing we did. It's look at what the other guy screwed up on. And anytime somebody wants to point out the shortcomings of another person, you have to question the motives. You have to also try and understand what they are equivocating on. What are they leaving out of that particular topic? And we are seeing a lot of that in specific to the ArriveCan app. The people questioning these contractors and questioning the management of this entire process, for the most part, are the Conservative Party questioning Liberal partisans. And that is, they're going to lead the questions in a way that they feel is necessary. And I'm not to say they're doing anything dishonest, but you do have to be aware of that, regardless of what party you follow, is that you are going to be given the side of the argument that party wants you to hear, right? So being open to both sides is important, and following reputable news sources, not social media sources, is where you get that accurate information.
Yeah. And look, this is how our politics has evolved now, right? Like, we live in a country where there's a multi-party system, and the intention is that these parties can represent different ideological policies, and that there should be an ever-changing balance of how our governments are formed relative to the number of seats from each party that make up the House at any given time, to represent how we as a country feel on certain issues. Is it a perfect system? No. Is there a perfect system? Absolutely not. But all we can do, if and when we are unhappy with the political process, is to get more involved in it, right? We can't wash our hands of it. We can't absolve ourselves of it. As citizens, it's our duty and responsibility. People like to talk a lot about rights. They like to talk about the rights that we have, the duty, the things that I have an obligation to have provided for me. And we don't think a lot about what our obligation is to provide and to hold up our end of the bargain. And living as a part of a society under any sort of political system is not a one-sided deal. We don't have rights without responsibilities. And so if you're unhappy about it, we need to connect. And there's lots of reasons to be unhappy about it, but the recourse is not to do nothing and to complain. We need to become more involved in our political processes.
Yeah. And, we are the Millennials and Community Podcast. This is two millennials on screen right now. Yeah, if you're listening, you might be or likely be a millennial, and the torch is being passed from the previous generations to us now. We're going to start seeing a lot more of us in the political theater. We already have. So if you want, as a millennial, the issues that are important to you to actually be heard, you got to raise up. You have to educate yourself. You have to spend the time being involved in these things. Because I know a lot of people in my close circles that don't want to be too involved in politics, and I get that sometimes. But the thought of not having any say in the things that are going to happen in the next 40 to 60 years of my life is not great. I want a say, and I want to be educated on what's going on. And I think that's really, really important, that when things like this happen, we don't just go, well, they'll figure it out, or things will get better when the other party comes into power, because that's not even necessarily true either. We have to speak up. We have to make our voices heard, and we have to let them know that we're not happy with it.
Yeah, I'm said it better myself.
Perfect. Well, anything else you want to say on this topic, Matt?
Nope, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, then this is going to have been a very quick and dirty ArriveCan, what some people are calling the Arrive scam app.
I know. I think that it's been not quick enough and far too dirty whenever I had to use ArriveCan.
Yeah, it's never worked for me either. So that's another thing. So we're gonna call it there, folks. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of InfoM.A.C. We hope you've been brought to light on a couple things you maybe didn't know about, and that we've encouraged you to make your voice heard if this is something that you're passionate about. So thank you guys very much from Carlo and Matt. We'll see you next time.
Take care, everyone.